Well, really, to follow the 10 points that we declared in Cork just 10 years ago last week. And at that time, I was asked by Fischler if I would chair a conference to be held in Cork. It was at the time when the Irish were holding the presidency of the Council. And if I would chair this conference, bringing together about 540 people from local authorities, from the leadership groups and many other organisations to make a declaration and a plan of action. And so those 10 points we've used again 10 years on to really consider what should happen. It is therefore not just a question of how agriculture fits into the environment, which is of course the modern trend and the problems that are there with us, that's part of it. How agriculture can fare generally, recognising that an untidy countryside, unfarmed or badly farmed, is not a pretty sight. You're not going to encourage tourists and people to come into the countryside if it's badly farmed. But farming is the basis of everything. But it's people who are living there. What's happening to village life? What's happening to people? Not just product, what's happening to people? And you get a wonderful country like this and a wonderful area like this in Galway, then I think we need to concentrate our minds to say what can be done. We're members of a European Union. What can be done across the board in terms of protecting the environment, taking care of the interests of the people, recognising the local needs, because you can't have one for all. It just doesn't work. So therefore bringing together those who are involved, who are concerned, to decide where we go from here.
And 10 years on, how well have we performed against those 10 points?
I think remarkably well. When the Common Agricultural Policy was reformed, a lot of people don't think it has been reformed, but it has been reformed quite dramatically. The declaration is that you have two pillars to it. In other words, you have the acreage payment paid directly to farmers under the scheme. And then in addition to that, you have pillar 2, and that is the assistance for the environment. I believe that the 10-point declaration made in Cork is really the scene setting for pillar 2. Now, of course, it hasn't worked entirely. I think that was produced with a good deal of vision from a lot of people who were there at that time. But nevertheless, I think now it's recognised as being important in today's terms. In other words, we're there. We've arrived at that situation, and it's how the environment can fit into the landscape, into farming, and how they can be helped. I've been amazed when you say how has it worked. I've been amazed in my own country, in Britain, to see so many farmers who are responding to it. The stewardship scheme. You go farm after farm, and I look over the hedges or over the walls in Britain as I travel around, and you see the 6-metre strips around the field. The hedges, which are dealt with in a totally different way, you only cut every 3rd year. Protection, therefore, of wildlife. Sounds a bit sentimental, but nevertheless it's all part of the scene, and farmers have responded to that, are responding to it, and I think they'll respond further as time goes by. There's one further aspect of this that we cannot ignore. We're facing climate change. We are obviously in need of energy and energy production. That can be produced, but it becomes part of the scene, and it hopefully, in respect of assistance that are given this way, hopefully can avoid some of the surpluses that we've found costly to deal with in the past, as we perhaps take our foot off the pedal a bit, produce what's needed, produce what the local consumer is demanding, and hopefully localization is the buzzword rather than globalization at the moment. And that being so, I think it can play its part. The 2 pillars can stay intact, providing we have the right amount of resources to keep it going.
Now, moving on to the challenges, what do you see are the challenges that are going to face rural development in the years to come?
Village life. I think that's the real problem. I've been to many areas in Europe, but certainly in my own country, where a lot of villages have lost the post office, they've lost the shop, they've lost the butcher, they've lost the grocer, and so on and so forth. All right. The order of the day seems to be the massive supermarket, very convenient. You can take a car, you can pick the stuff up. Do people realise how many thousands of miles some of those products have travelled? Is that not a problem to the ozone layer and to the cost of energy and to the pollution that is there in the air and so on? Is it not better to stop and think, well, we could grow that stuff here just as well, cheaper, and it finds people work. So it's worrying that village life has changed to that extent. I don't think it's too late. It can be drawn back, but the carrot has to be there, the incentive has to be there to encourage people to do so. Can I make one other point on that, which I think is certainly relevant? I said in one of the points I made in my speech today, do we really want to encourage the city slicker to invest his money into farmland and farm the land, which they can do? They can employ a manager and they can farm it well. They can farm fairly extensively. They bring money into the area, but at the same time it's, to me, a little bit like, they're coming and taking over village life, when frankly a lot of them are quite ignorant of the way the villages are run, and I have plenty of examples of that happening, where people who have grown up in the cities and so on move into a village and things are never the same again, because they're not necessarily knitting in with the people who live there all their lives.
You made one very interesting point there. We call it here in Ireland food miles. Food miles is becoming a problem. Food is coming across the whole way across the world to go onto our shelves. I'm glad to see that you are not an advocator of food miles, you're an advocator of food local.
I am indeed, and I'm not against competition as long as competition is fair. But again, a point that I made earlier is, take chickens as an example. You've got chickens coming from Korea, from China, from Brazil, from all over, coming in at a price way below the cost of production of chicken in this country. And fine. But, a woman working at a chicken factory in some of those countries, getting, say, €2 a week equivalent, and against €200 a week in this country, you can't compete on those terms. Competition, fine, but let's have fair competition. And then the other aspect of it, of course, is the food mile damage and the thousands of miles that some of these things are travelling. And that doesn't quite make sense, does it?
No, and of course, given your your example rather about the chicken, food security is equally as important.
Food security is very important, and I don't think I don't think people have realised what that means. If I could use an example, it goes back long enough so that I can actually report it. There was a time when I was threatened, my life was threatened, and I was sent a sample in a test tube, they said, of what they call germ warfare. Wrapped around the test tube was an article from the Veterinary Journal. Every time the word salmonella was mentioned, it was underlined. Wrapped around that was a letter which threatened me with my life unless I persuaded my government to do certain things, etc. And fortunately, there was nothing in that sample. I had 3 weeks that happened. Now, how easy it would be for that to happen. Now, that's minor compared with some of the things that can happen. And I did refer earlier to agri-terrorism, which is another frightening aspect of it. So, You know, there are times when you've got to stop and think, batten my hatches down, let's, make sure that our own people have a secure supply of food and at the right quality and at the right price, which they themselves can afford, but even more so enjoy.